This presentation is brought to you by Tom Zaleski, Zaleski Removable Prosthetics, and Matrix Dental Laboratory and Consulting. We specialize in removable prosthetics. Find out more about me at www.matrixdentallab.com and check me out on Facebook. Type in Zaleski Removable Prosthetics or Thomas Zaleski. Today's presentation: closed flask reline technique, using lab putty for quick and accurate relines and repairs. Rather than using a reline jig, 25 years ago I started using this closed flask reline technique. It involves using PVS putty and your conventional flask use for heat cured processing. Because the flask is closed metal to metal when invested, it gives me an accurate dimensional stability, so that I'm not concerned about losing my vertical. And it incorporates products which I'm familiar with from other techniques in the laboratory. Zermac Platinum 85 putty is my recommendation. I like 85 shore hardness for this technique. It's the addition type putty. That means 1 scoop of hardener, 1 scoop of base, 1 scoop of catalyst. So catalyst and base, scoop of each, instead of that ribbon of gel that gets all over your fingers. Can't stand it. Rapid flask, which I use to flask my cases, between about 20 minutes and I'm ready to rock and ready to boil out the case. So it's a very accurate, dense and hard material. Rapid flask from Whipmix. Also Diamond D heat cured acrylic. I reline all of my dentures with Diamond D. They were made prior to my using Diamond D. I still use the Diamond D to reline them because Diamond D comes in all of the conventional shades, all the industry standard shades I should say, and very easy to do so, and it fortifies the repair because Diamond D of course is the most impact and flexury strong acrylic on the market today. I also use some Typhoon carbides. However, since this presentation was put together, I've kind of moving away from the Typhoon just because of the fact that I'm not finding that they hold up, and I don't have the control like I do with conventional carbides. Anyways, we'll visit this a little bit later in the presentation. So here's the closed flask reline technique in a nutshell. We receive the denture in with the reline impression. That could be Co-Soft or Hydrocast or PVS putty, whatever. And we'll go ahead and invest it. And I'll use Hydrocal 105 for my investing stone. And I'll use a good separator. I find the best separator for these techniques is Vaseline. Just put a little Vaseline around the base area. And once I've gotten that invested and it's ready to go, then I turn to investing the upper half of the flask, and the first step of course is to take a scoop or two of the Zermac putty, and I work from the center of the palette out. I work from here and then I fold over the edges and make sure that I press against the sides. But what I'm doing is I'm molding the outside of that reline, and I'm also exposing these little cusp tips. Not very much. You don't want them hanging out because they'll snap off. But you just want them to be a positive stop so you don't lose your vertical. Because if these were covered with putty and you press the case, a chance of you changing the vertical could occur. You'll also notice that I have these great little undercut grooves or undercut dimples, and I put those in while the putty's still soft because when I pour the cap of Rapid Flask, I want to have something to lock this into the upper half of the mold. So I'll put those dimples in, and then once it's I give it about 5 minutes. I don't wait for it to become fully hard. Then I'll go ahead and I'll cap the case with my Rapid Flask. So cusp tip exposure is one thing to be concerned about, and of course undercuts to retain is the other. Let me show you a different angle. There's a different angle. You can see putty's intimate to the land area and the undercut dimples. Okay, now once that's covered and flasked, I put that in my tank wood it's boiling, and I leave it in there between 8 and 10 minutes, not any longer than that. First off, I don't want the putty to swell, and second off, there's really nothing to melt. It's more of a softening of the Reline material. It also sets up a condensation between the two stones and allows them to separate rather easily. Then once I've separated, I pull the denture out of the upper half, and you can see the little intaglios that indicate that I exposed the cusp tips. But I'll pull that upper denture out, and then this allows me to go and trim all the borders nice and uniform and reduce any transitional layer from the plasticizer that was in the soft liner material or any place else that or anything else that might need reduction. I'll usually take a magic marker and outline the border, and I try to make the borders uniformly reduced. Here's another picture just to show you the butt joint that I incorporate, and then I also coat the inside of the denture again with Vitacol or Palabond to assure a good bond. You can't really tell here, but I'll take and I'll polish the butt joint all the way around before I add the Palabond. It made it look a little matte finished, but the fact of the matter is that they have been polished. That polishing, I believe, along with the characteristics of Diamond D acrylic, prevent the bleach line that we're trying to avoid. Here's the case reinserted, and you'll notice it reinserts very nicely. You have your border squared off. You have an adequate amount of reduction. In fact, you can see I have the backs of the teeth showing through. I had to reduce that much to make sure I had reduced the transition layer. And again, that transition layer is a softening of the hard material induced by the plasticizers that are in the impression materials. So make sure that you remove that adequately. If not, when you do a hard reline on this case, you'll end up incorporating the plasticizers and the case can actually break from the inside out. That would be more so in a lower denture where you get these fractures and you can't figure out where they're coming from. And a lot of times that fracture is coming from the fact that you did not remove, or somebody did not remove, an adequate amount of the plasticizer, and so it was softening from the inside out. Just a place to look around and be aware. So, to review, slightly expose your cusp tips, undercut the dimples to hold a putty in cap, about 8 to 10 minutes at boil out. You don't want the putty to swell. Always remove the gummy transitional acrylic from the tissue conditioner. I take a carbide and tap on the plastic, and if it makes a dull sound, then I know that it's still soft in that area. And you can tell a hard area from a soft by tapping on it, just by the sound it makes. I would square and bevel the edges, and polish them if you'd like. And then short fill, multiple trial packs. Very important that we short fill the cases. If you try to squeeze all your acrylic at one time, you'll end up pushing acrylic between the putty and the facials of the teeth. So short fill, short to long. In other words, put a little in, a little in, a little in, continue to close. You might have to do 3-4 packs. Then once you get a flash, put your little ball in the center of the palette and close it final. And then boil to cure. Or if you want to do a long cure, you can. I do on relines both, but 165 for an hour and a half hour boil is the quicker method, and of course 8 hours and 165 is the longer method. Just wanted to show you what the Typhoon surface looks like. Again, the jury for me is still out on these. I don't seem to have the control with them. I tend to like to use the carbides. Maybe it's a comfort issue for me, but I just wanted to show you the surface that you can get from it. It's quite nice. It's rough, but again, like I say, they dull on me. They clog, and I don't know. Every time I have my thumb in the wrong spot, I seem to grind off part of my thumb. So I'm back to carbides. But again, Typhoon, if you like it, this is what you could get as far as the surface goes. Alright, so there it is again. And then we'll pack it, as I mentioned before, short to long, cure it, and then we'll break the case out. Breakout is very simple because literally most of the time when you separate the flask, the upper flask will come right off, just like when you remove the denture from the putty on the upper half of the flask. But you can see this is a finished product. It's a little overexposed, this picture, because I had it on a gray background. Bad. But nonetheless, you don't see any of that. You don't see any of the bleach lines, and it finished up very nicely. So that's one thing. That's the conventional Reline. But how about this little added benefit? You can repair teeth while you're doing the Reline because of the fact that you have that option to grind out the area, where the tooth was, and place a new tooth, and then invest the case and process the new tooth in place during the Reline. So let me show you that real quickly. It's very quick. I would take this area here, grind it out, but I wouldn't perforate the base. I would set a tooth in here. I would ask for a opposing model so that I make sure that the tooth is occlusally correct. But I would remove all this area, then wax in what I could. When I grind out this area, be very careful to maintain the gingival cowl as much as possible. I don't like grinding out here because we have to re-wax that area, and it just it's more area where acrylic can squeeze through. So clean out that area. So anyway, set the tooth. There's the gingival cowl. It's remained. Now this is after the case has been invested, and I've pulled it out. Now I'll take and I'll grind through the base, and I'll put a hole through there because I want the acrylic from the Reline to squeeze into the back of the tooth that I'm replacing it with. And again, I'll maintain this gingival cowl as close as possible. There it looks what it looks like before I reinsert the denture into the mold. You'll notice that this area is white, where just like the cusp tips. That's because once I've invested the case with putty prior to pouring the flask, the rapid flask on the upper half, what I'll do is I'll expose the facial of the tooth. This gives me a positive stone index in order to keep the tooth from moving when I'll set the denture back on top of this and process acrylic. I do not want this. I want this to be as undisturbable as possible. And so that little area right there is strictly in stone. Okay. Here's a little close-up just to show you. Again, I'll reinsert that tooth in there after I've cleaned it up and stuck a diatoric in it, and then I'll stick the denture base right on top of it. There's the tooth, diatoric. And then I put the base back in. You notice the base has been prepared, trimmed, painted with Vitacol or Palabond. And again, you'll notice I'm very aggressive. Get as much of that plasticizer I can out of there. Most of my doctors like to use some sort of a tissue conditioner, and all those tissue conditioners tend to have plasticizers, and if they're left in for any length of time, they end up softening the hard acrylic surface. Again, worth mentioning. You notice I've got a nice clean access hole, so when I squeeze acrylic, it's going to go right down, fill that void, and because I haven't removed the gingival cowl, it will remain in place, and basically it'll just be a little microfine filling at the border where the tooth is set. Anyways, this is then cured, and this is broken out, and you can see that repair has become part of the denture base. It's basically undetectable. It will not discolor like conventional self-cure resins will, and it's a great way to get the patient in not only to get a Reline, but also to do the kind of repairs that have a value. There's a facial view just to show you. Another cool thing you can do is if you have a midline repair, you can incorporate your midline repair into the Reline as well, and you get a 2-for-1 out of the deal. So here's your impression, your denture, and I've sketched out the area I'm going to reduce. You'll notice on this case a couple of things right off the bat. First off, there's a couple of holes at either side of the arch near the tuberosities and one mid-palate. That's because this doctor likes to put holes in the base so he can let off the hydrostatic pressure from the impression material, and he's using zinc oxide eugenol impression material, which tends to want to hang up hydrostatically. So by giving it some access holes, this will prevent the denture from hanging up. But you'll notice this case has been repaired in the past. We have a repair there that looks like it's been done before, and I believe it all stems from this, which is that we have this occlusal scheme which has been worn into a wedge effect. I'll make a recommendation to my doctors that we need to adjust the lower opposing and set some new posterior denture teeth. We could do that also at this appointment or at this Reline appointment, but most people don't want to spend the money, because if they wanted to spend the money they would have already repaired it. But nonetheless, we offer the option. So let's move on to the next step, which would be the removal of the areas that are going to be filled with new acrylic during the Reline. The tuberosity areas, I've opened those holes up because I want to make sure there's an adequate flow of acrylic through the holes. Those small pinpoint holes the doctor had there sometimes can get clogged, and I'd rather have them open and free. It'll all be relined anyways. And then when I take in the repair into consideration, I open up a huge area to encompass more than just the fracture line, and also I take a bit of tooth off, not only from this view but also from this view. Facially, you'll notice that I've trimmed all the way back. I have not touched the tooth, but I've taken out all the acrylic that's in that area. And in the inside, in the intaglio area, you'll notice that I've removed the back side of the tooth a bit and gotten the acrylic out of there. I'm going to treat this with Palabond or Vitacol, and I'm going to get this area nice and bonded so that this all becomes incorporated as one piece. And this is going to strengthen the area, because if I was only going to repair the area, it was just a thin crack, and if I don't get all that cracked material out of there, then what I do is I still have a propagation area. And since this is not going to be fixed, in other words adjusted to not do this again, I have to think in all the ways I can how long I can prolong this before it fractures again. Again, then it's inserted into the upper half, and now you can see how nicely everything's been trimmed, reduced, and ready to be pressed with fresh acrylic. And it's all going to become one piece again, and we won't have any of that nasty discoloration and smell that comes along with self-curing repairs. Once the case is processed to completion, I wanted to show you how nice and easy this putty comes off. Because of the fact that it doesn't stick to the acrylic base, it literally just peels right off. It leaves a nice clean area. Just needs to be finished, polished and finished, but you can see just pulls right off. It's great. And there's your facial view. You can see this is before it's been taken off the model. You can already see it's going to finish up extremely nice. Also down here you'll notice this is an indication that I used the correct technique of short to long filling, and why I don't have any acrylic pushing down along the facials of this flange, because I pack from short to long rather than put a big ball of acrylic in there and then squeeze it, squeeze it, squeeze it. And by the way, speed of the pressure, speed of the application of pressure, I should say, very critical too. You don't want to just slam it down. You want a slow easing and flowing of the acrylic, and I find that the Diamond D acrylic has got a nice flow property. It's very soft, smooth, and creamy when it's at its packing state. It really lends itself well to this technique. Obviously it refortifies your denture as well, because it has the highest impact and flexural strength of any acrylic on the market today. Here's the inside if you needed proof of the finish that you get. This was the intaglio surface, and of course this isn't polished. All that is just the surface right off the model. Model was the impression was an ideal impression, a very nice impression. Was with zinc oxide eugenol, and it picked up all the detail. But what I like is that the finish is so smooth. This was just walnut shell blasted. There's no polishing that occurred at all, and it's just a nice homogeneous type of look. And here on the palatal or lingual palatal version, you can see where I made my repair, and the holes on the tuberosities you can't see them, and you can't see where any of this repair was incorporated as well, which is a good proof that the bleach lines do not exist if it's prepared correctly. We still have this rotten occlusal scheme which is still going to be a problem down the line. Hopefully between now and the time it breaks again, we can convince the patient that it would be in their best interest to get a new denture. And here's the facial aspect of the case, basically completed. Hey, I want to thank you for stopping by to take a look at this. I hope it answered some questions on a technique, maybe open your eyes to a technique, or maybe help you to refine the technique you're already using in regards to putty and a flask, and maybe you didn't think about some things, maybe you've had some issues, perhaps some flashing on the facial of the dentures, or maybe you're not getting the bonds that I'm getting, or lack of bleach lines. Maybe some of these little hints and tips might help you out. I hope so. And please stop back again. Come and visit me at Facebook and keep your eye open, because I'll be on the road for the second half of this year in 2011. Hopefully I'll be at a town near you. Have a great day, and thanks for stopping by.